Hey, it's Kasey Owen, and I have two new friends with me today. I have Mark and John with me, and let's just jump into it. Who are you guys? Why are we here?
Well, we're here for two reasons. Number one, it's October, so Halloween is coming up.
Right.
Number two, we had the pleasure of doing a paranormal investigation here at the radio station.
Yeah. So, you guys are part of the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association. Did I get that right?
We are, yeah. So the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association is what we call a resolution-based paranormal team. So we go into locations, homes, businesses, and try to identify the cause of hauntings.
Okay.
And why the particular type of activity that is happening is occurring.
Right.
And eventually we want to identify the culprit, so to speak, and remove them from the home or the business.
Great. And you do this, so I heard that you used to be a cop, so you kind of take this with a very critical, police lens.
Yeah, in fact, we set up our investigations exactly like criminal investigations.
Really?
So we want to document everything we do as well as we can. So we have a lot of paper documentation that goes along with the physical, technical investigation that we do. We want to have very controlled areas of investigation. We log ourselves in and out of areas, and we know where everybody's at, what everybody's doing. We use a lot of video, a lot of audio, so we can record where we're at and refer back to that later if need be. And we also, though, work with the psychic medium to do a more comprehensive investigation. We also feel that we should get as much information in as many different ways as we can and see if the psychic information will match historical information, what the clients are reporting, and what the evidence of the physical investigation reveals.
Nice. So is it often that you get, physical evidence? We see on TV, things flying across the room and shadows, and you hear things. Is that kind of what you guys find in real life, or do your investigations kind of look a little different than that?
I think just the opposite.
Yeah, it is.
Television, what a lot of people don't know, I have some background with some of the television shows. They might see a team at a location for one particular night on television. In reality, it may have taken 3 different visits to that location to get enough evidence or experiences to show in a one-night television show.
Okay.
So getting physical evidence while you're actually there for 3, 4, 5, 6 hours is very tough. In most hauntings, people actually will report more experiential things like seeing a shadow figure, maybe a ghost, or they might hear something like footsteps or someone's voice. So it tends to be more experiential than physical things happening. So when we get the cases where we do have some physical stuff happening, 9 times out of 10 the cameras are pointed in the wrong direction and you miss it anyway. But it turns out to be really good experiences anyway, and stuff that hopefully we can document when it happens.
Right. So what's some of the equipment that you guys use when you come in? I know there's probably a ton of it, but what would you say a typical setup would look like?
Well, it depends on the type of investigation that we do and what people are looking for. Some people don't care about evidence. They know they have something in their house and they just want it out. So if that's the case, we might do what we call a condensed investigation. We'll work with our psychic medium, Virginia, to try to get that kind of information from her on who would be there. We might carry around a few just handheld pieces of equipment like a camcorder, maybe what's called an EMF detector, which picks up naturally electrical magnetic fields that electricity causes, but also the theory in the field is that ghosts can create these EMF spikes that will occur, and you can measure that with an EMF meter. So we might have something like a camcorder, a voice recorder, and an EMF meter on some of our smaller cases. Where people are more interested in having physical evidence documented as well, and we already have had reports that there was a lot of physical things going on, we would go a little bit beyond that. So we'd have the camcorders. We set up a lot more voice recorders around a home or a business. And we also set up stationary cameras, closed circuit TV cameras that will record, and we could sit at a computer monitor and watch many different rooms at the same time.
Wow.
So we have someone watching a television screen, watching all the cameras while we have a team out investigating. and different environmental devices that we have out there. So it might be temperature gauges, air ion counters, stuff like that.
Nice. And now, John, you work with the Schuylkill County Historical Society. So do you do a lot of the history with the PPA? Is that what you do, or do you get in on the ghost hunting action too?
I kind of do a little bit of everything.
Cool.
Wherever they need me. Haven't been able to get on as many cases as I have in the past, but usually what will happen is I won't do a lot of the historical research early on, especially before we go into a location.
Right.
Just because, number one, obviously you don't want to go in with certain ideas into a case. So what we'll do is we'll go in, Ginger, we'll go ahead and do the walkthrough, and we'll record the actual walkthrough, and then you kind of go back and you try to find exactly where everything ties in.
Right.
And I kind of lucked out with the cases in Pottsville because, I know a lot about the history in the area, especially with the macabre and the dark side of it a little bit.
Right.
And kind of fell in nicely with that, so I get into the historical part as well. But yeah, I do go out. I love the ghost aspect, actually sitting there. And one thing I could say for certain is every single case I've ever been on, the people that bring us in, 100% no doubt they believe something's going on, and we're there to help them out. And I think it's a great thing just to give them comfort in the long run.
So I love that. So this is really about, we had this conversation before that you call a plumber when something's going on, or you call a carpenter, but a lot of people are hesitant to reach out and call, a paranormal investigation team. And you guys are really here to lend a hand and to help people.
Absolutely. And just to get the evidence as well, that's always a plus.
Yeah. And we always tell people, whether they're looking at our team or other teams, that if you're looking for a team to come in, you want a credible team. So if it's more than you want something documented, you want more than just physical evidence documented, you want a resolution to the case, you need to ask specifically what they are able to do for you. Do they work with the psychic medium or energy workers, or someone skilled, even clergy, that can remove a spirit from the home? Or can they just come in and conduct an investigation and tell you, we have something going on, or you don't? One thing that is a little bit troubling, and we get a lot of calls where a team might go in and they document physical activity and they don't do a cleansing or anything to remove an entity. Sometimes it stirs up activity a little more, but now it made it a little bit more real for the people, and they're still dealing with whatever's there.
Right.
So if your goal is to have whatever's there removed, you need to make sure that team can do that.
And I feel like a lot of people's goal is to then have that removed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, typically. Yeah.
So you guys checked into T-102. So can you tell me a little bit about? I have no idea what you guys did. I don't know what you found. I am kind of completely in the dark. So what happened?
So one of the first things we do is to have our psychic medium come in. We give her no prior information at all into what's happening at the location, what type of location it even is. We've taken her to wide open fields with no structures at all. We've taken her to little house trailers, to multi-million-dollar homes, to warehouses, manufacturing buildings. So she doesn't know where she's going.
She's a good sport.
She is. We really put her through the ringer. We test her all the time. And we actually tested her for about a year prior to just giving her an address to go to, because even with an address now, you could pull certain information off the internet. So we wanted to make certain that she had no information. So for the first year we started working with her, we made her meet us at a different location and then follow us to wherever we were going. And she was just so accurate with her information, it became kind of redundant after a while. We just said, okay, we're going to give you an address, come here. But I inform all our clients about that we do give her an address, and let everybody know she's going to come up with information surrounding the property and maybe the community anyway. But we're looking for very intimate details of what's going on in the house with the people. And that's stuff you're not going to find on the internet. So,
Right.
So we're comfortable giving her an address now. But the first thing we did here at the radio station was John and Virginia, our medium, did a walkthrough. And do you want to touch base on some of the things that she had initially come up with?
Absolutely. She picked up on people right away within the building. One person in particular, she believed that it was a person who was most likely a guard, because she actually referred to this guy as having a gun.
Okay.
And he was not exactly excited when people were in the building during the nighttime.
Really?
Yeah, that kind of, caused a little trepidation for him. In addition to that, she picked up on a female spirit by the name of B, and she thinks it's Bridget. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of an interesting that she actually got a name in there. With
Yeah.
that. And the last one was an older gentleman that she believed was upstairs, and he would come down and pay a visit every once in a while.
Really?
So she was Native Americans, within the area. She picked up on those very quickly. And
Okay.
obviously within Pottsville, we had Native Americans here. She did pick up some information with the railroad track behind, and a gentleman who likes to stand at the window as well and look out at the railroad when the trains would go by.
Really?
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
Wow. So there are a lot of people that were spending their time here. I mean, we're an entertaining bunch, so I can see why.
That's right. And one thing that a lot of people don't recognize when they think of hauntings, they're usually thinking of the worst, and it's something that's going to hurt me.
Right.
But using the security guard as an example, that's someone she picked up on. This guy was very passionate about the place, and for whatever reason, after he died, he decided to stay here. And he's kind of still going around doing his thing. He's making sure the property is safe, it's secure, that the people here are safe, and recognizes after hours people shouldn't be here. So,
That's why
he sort of looks into that. Yeah, so you kind of got a little bit of assistance on the other side, looking out for you guys.
Oh, that actually makes me feel really happy.
That's
That's kind of sweet. So did any of those come through like in a physical way? Was there like any evidence caught that way, or was it just through what Virginia picked up on?
Okay, I'll touch base on that.
Yeah, there was some evidence.
Yeah. One of the first things that I think we noticed, we have something, we call it a REM puck. It's essentially an electromagnetic field detector. So when you get these pulses of electromagnetism, it will sound off an alarm on the device.
Okay.
And it's also a proximity sensor. Now, this device is designed to disregard any natural man-made electrical stuff, like walkie-talkie transmissions, microwaves. That kind of stuff won't set it off. So very rarely do we get any activity from it because most places are pretty quiet. So there's one particular office in the main area of the station here that is believed to have maybe a little bit of negative energy in there. And we had set this REM puck in there, the sensor, and while we were setting up some other stuff, we heard that go off. So that was the first interesting thing that happened. And what was also interesting, it has a cycle that it goes through. So it only went off for like maybe a second or two, and it plays a tone when that happens. So it was a bit shorter than if someone had stood in that field and set it off, and it went through its cycle. So that was one thing we noticed, and very shortly thereafter we had a little device on a counter right across from that room in the hallway. And that device is set off by motion as well. So it's just a little ball with lights inside. And that we got for children. If we have reports of children haunting a location, we thought that might be fun for them to try to manipulate. So we put one of those balls on the counter, and you can either touch it and it'll go off, or if you pick it up or you hit the table that it's on, it will make this ball go off. And again, that will cycle through about a 5 or 6 second time period where all these different little colored lights will flash. So we had noticed just a short time after the meter went off in the one room that the light started to light up without being touched or anyone going near it. And it, again, was not a full cycle. It was very quick, which is unusual. We can't physically do that ourselves. So it was definitely something strange. And again, it's something that the electricity of the station is not going to set off. So during the course of the investigation, we had similar stuff happen with those little round sensor balls and a couple of our meters. We had a meter sitting, another EMF meter sitting on the counter right next to that one ball. And it had lit up as if a magnetic field had come into it. And across the hall in that room with the negative energy where that REM puck went off the first time, a second sensor went off in there immediately after the sensor in the hallway went off. So we had some movement from the hallway into that room, and again, it was very quick, just enough to set the sensors off. And so a little bit of activity, and then later on we had two additional light balls that we had one on the floor just outside of that office, and one down the hall a little bit. Those had gone off too.
Interesting. So is there anything that you can like deduce from that, or do you just sort of leave it as this is what happened and, you know?
Well, a lot of it we kind of sometimes chalk up to that is extremely unusual. In this particular case, the one light bulb that happened to be across from that negative energy type of office on the shelf, our medium Virginia had literally felt a man come from the second floor down and literally just said, "Oh, hi, old man," because it was an older man. And literally, as soon as she got out of that mouth, the ball started going off right in front of her out in the hallway.
Okay.
So she feels that this man came down and was able to somehow activate the lights on there, and
Interesting.
that's who did that. The second time, and this we find happens on cases a lot too, just because Virginia is there, she will connect with loved ones on the other side for anybody who's present. Investigators, could be you, the clients.
Okay.
And in this case, she had felt that one of our clients' dads was present.
Oh.
And
There shouldn't be saying "aw" during ghost talk, but that's so sweet. I think it's sweet.
That's comforting. Sure.
yeah,
It
so
is.
we had an incident that occurred with one of those light bulbs. Same thing. Virginia felt that dad just happened to show up at that time, and the light bulb went off.
Wow.
Yep.
So after all of this was over, was there like a clearing done here, or do we still have lots of friends with us?
Yeah, you have a few friends here, and that's one thing we look at case by case.
Okay.
You know, if they're not harmful and they do not want to be removed, and the clients are okay with that, and there's some cases where the clients might not even have any clue that they're here anyway,
Right.
that would be something that we would just leave alone. And, you know, Virginia claims she sort of gives them a heads up that they have a way to go to heaven, if you will, if they want to. So that's what was done in this case here. And I think another spirit that she had picked up on was sort of transient from an upstairs apartment that just pops down once in a while, but most people would not even recognize that somebody was here.
Right.
You know, if you're open like that, if you have some psychic ability, you might, but the average person's not going to really pick up on them.
Right.
And of course, there was the security guard who she felt was actually helpful to have here, because he was keeping
It's fine with us.
some other energies that might not be so kind out of the building.
Right.
So,
He can stick around as long
Yeah.
as he would like.
This was, the most intriguing is probably the old man, though. She was pretty adamant all night long about the old man. And like Mark said before, when she greeted the old man for the sensor to go off, and I was actually sitting about 3 feet away looking directly at it. And literally the second she said, "Hello, old man," which lit right up.
So do we have any like historical context of who he is or may be, or he just happened to like live here at one point, or does she even know that?
There have been people living here a long time. We know that for sure. So,
True.
Virginia was saying that he came from upstairs. He was in an
Okay.
apartment, and he was the one that would actually come through the ceiling.
Okay.
So, people living here, there's been so many that's difficult because we have no perfect names like first and
Right.
last. However, yeah, it has quite a lucrative history. So it became a bank in 1907, but before that, we know people were definitely here. There were religious services that took place on the property.
Okay.
And also there's advertisements in local papers about clairvoyants coming in, doing tarot readings, spiritualists, you know, all kinds of stuff. And they were highly touted coming in. They were saying that they were world famous and trying to get people to come in and get readings done. It all took place right here at T-102.
Wow, that's wild. So specifically in this building, we have a very long history.
212 South Center Street.
that's right.
That's so cool. And I know she said she had picked up on some like Native American stuff happening. Now, I'm assuming that's probably not unusual for around here.
True, yes. This type of area, we find that quite often. In fact, one of our most recent cases was a beautiful brand new development, and it's less than 10 years old with all these, you know, big, beautiful homes. Last place you would expect to find a haunting. And when we went to the house, overwhelmingly, Virginia was picking up on Native Americans all over on the property, coming into the house, going into the neighbors' houses. She even commented to the owners that if you talk to the neighbors, many of them will probably report haunting type activity going on inside the home. And the client actually validated it and said, "I already have, and a lot of people here are having trouble."
Wow.
And they just happened to build on an area inhabited by Native Americans, back in time. Many of them died and, decided to stay. They're still there.
Interesting. So these can go back for hundreds of thousands of years.
You were pretty far.
Yeah, as long as people were there.
Wow.
Yeah, and what's a little more difficult to validate names on a location like this. It's so large, it's so old, and has so many people coming through it.
Right.
It's a little tougher than someone who owns a private residence, where you have deeds. So we could do deed search. We could do historical record searches at historical societies and courthouses, and look at all kinds of documents to, validate the names that Virginia comes up with there.
Right.
We have problems with larger buildings that inhabit a lot of people, and also
Right.
rental properties are sometimes a nightmare to try to, validate names. And
So is a haunting like the correct term, since what you guys are doing isn't like the hokey pokey kind of stuff? Is there like better terminology that people who are trying to be respectful can use? Or
yeah, I think there's a little bit of a difference between ghost hunters, which is more aimed at like a hobby-based group. They like to go out there and try to experience stuff, or maybe catch something on film or camera, or maybe a voice on a voice recorder. We fall in more towards paranormal investigators. We go a little bit beyond that, where paranormal resolutionists, I guess you want to call it that. So we do
that.
we do investigate, but our goal is to resolve the case. So we're not necessarily putting the evidence as the priority.
Right.
We're putting the priority of identifying who's there and trying to get them out. So the clients are okay and feel safe and are comfortable, especially in a home. That's your comfort place. And
Right.
it's very unnerving to have other people there you can't see, or sometimes you do see, which might even be more uncomfortable. So that's the primary goal, is to try to identify who's there, get them out. But there's a lot of different types of teams out there, from the hobby-based ghost hunting teams to,
Right.
Even more scientific teams who, there's some universities who are really jumping into this, that are doing all kinds of environmental studies to try to figure out why certain paranormal activity occurs, or even like psychokinesis, which would be more of a psychic experience people have.
Wow.
And I think the one thing is, even when I started with the group about 9 years ago, I guess it is now, the one thing I really liked about the PPA is everything's scientific based. So Mark is, the way he goes about it and the way he has everything set within our group is just very intricate. And I said before, Mark is affectionately known as the man where evidence goes to die. Because he's always able to find rational explanations.
Right.
But when we find those situations that there's nothing to counteract what we think we're experiencing, then we know we're onto something.
Ah.
And like I said, we put the investigations together like we're conducting a criminal investigation. So not only are we looking for evidence of a haunting, where we're trying to capture physical evidence or personal experiences and witness statements, but we're trying to gather evidence to a suspect of who would be doing that.
Okay.
So, when we can work with someone as skilled as Virginia to come up with sometimes first and last names. And a lot of people like to just stay in the scientific side or technical side, and that's fine. But again, we're trying to find out who's there. So if you could identify who's there and find out why they stayed, you have a much better chance of working with that spirit to get them out of a location. There's a lot of people that, I'm going to pick on the church for a little bit. If you have an exorcist come in, you are forcibly trying to remove whatever's there.
Right.
Now, if you have something that's a negative entity, considered something like a demon, let's say, that's a battle sometimes, and you would, most likely need to do an exorcism. But a typical human-based spirit, and not all people believe in that, but, Virginia does and connects with these energies. And when you can convince them to go on their own accord, it's very rare that they would ever come back, as opposed to someone who gets pushed out.
Right.
Could later come back.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You're forced out and you didn't want to leave.
Exactly.
And when you're convinced to leave, you're like, I don't want to go back there.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, but we're very, very tough on our evidence. We want to make sure that if we're going to provide it to a client, that it's authentic and we're not, making a mistake. And we have a great group of investigators who are all cross-trained basically to do the same stuff. And So we'll go in and, I mean, it's not unusual for us to have about 14 voice recorders, scattered throughout a building. And we have investigators who will review those. So if someone comes up with something that's a little anomalous, it sounds a little bit weird, we'll cross-reference that with every other single recording device that we have. We even put recording devices outside of buildings because we found in certain areas like basements and attics, sound from outside travels in those areas very easily, and you get all kinds of weird voices on recorders in those areas.
Right.
So we want to cross-reference all those recorders, double-check everything. We have our camcorders. Any team that goes out to investigate has a camcorder. It's basically a log of events, a video log that tells us where we were, what we were doing.
Right.
It's usually very clear audio. So 9 out of 10 times when, I get evidence submitted to me, I start cross-referencing it as well as other investigators, but we can normally find that the cause was us, or maybe somebody outside or something like that. And,
Interesting.
in those rare occasions, we do get, anomalous voices, though, that line up with exactly what Virginia's talking about, and she corroborates our stuff and vice versa.
Interesting. So what should people know about maybe making their personal spaces, their workspaces, like happy, good energy? Is there anything that, they can do day to day to kind of keep the good in and the bad out?
You want that one?
Well, I think that's more your area.
Yeah. One of the best things people could do is sunshine, daylight. We go into too many houses that have some dark stuff going on, and we find that the windows are all covered. There's no natural light in there. And, like attracts like. So if you have a negative energy space, let's say there's a lot of infighting in the family, a lot of domestic issues, maybe there's some, alcohol abuse, just a lot of frustrated people, you're going to pull in negative stuff, if you're open enough to attract something. And case after case, we find that, the more dark and negative a house is, the darker the spirits are that are there. So you want a lot of sunshine. One of the biggest things I recommend is living plants, because plants put out their own energy. It's a very positive living energy. So put plants in a space, care for them, obviously.
Good luck to some of us.
Right. And, you can have, lemon seems to be very cleansing in many ways. That's one of the
Okay, we'll try this. Or it was the old man. Either one. Please be nice. We want to finish this. So, John, can you talk a little bit about Schuylkill County? I've heard that we're sort of spirited, especially like here in Pottsville. What are some of the things that have been going on here?
Pottsville has a lot of stories. Of course, we have the waterway down below, and could be a conduit for some of the energy experienced within the city.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Just on Center Street alone, Big Shop 6, BI, it's very well known to have some activity going on, and the people who own it are wonderful. First of all, very welcome. And the good news is the activity that's in there is also kind of warm. So there's not too much you have to worry about. Yeah.
Right.
But they've made the claim of actually seeing a full body apparition within one of the windows.
Interesting.
And a light bulb that kind of gets a little bit lighter, or brighter whenever the children are around, which is nice. They've heard footsteps up on the second floor as well.
Okay.
The Schuylkill County Historical Society is a spot, and we kind of think maybe attachments might be taking place within there with all the items.
Right.
We had an opportunity to do an investigation a couple weeks ago, and there's some interesting evidence, no doubt. We had some sensors going off.
We had some experiences there. Beautiful building.
Yeah, it is. The former Park Hotel. Some of the stories that are coming out of the Park Hotel are rather dark, murders, suicides, but that's been a documented location for years of having experiences. And definitely one of my favorites when it comes to activity is the prison, Schuylkill County Prison.
Oh, I'm sure.
With the executions that have taken place, 16 overall.
I'm sure.
One man that was executed was actually buried on prison grounds and never exhumed.
Wow.
They have the dungeon down below. And over the summer, I actually spent about 15 hours in the dungeon just going through records for the Historical Society. And it's a pretty ominous place, no doubt about that.
I would assume so.
Yeah.
So do we still have like some of the mollies hanging out, or?
Neat story when it comes to the mollies. One of the most famous stories in the area actually goes with the courthouse for seeing an entity walking within, and people have said that it's the spirit of one of the mollies. Wow. Even though that's not the courthouse where the mollies were tried, The claim is that you could see a Molly walking throughout, and they claim it maybe looked like Thomas Duffy, who was one of the men that was hanged on June 21st, 1877.
Wow.
Yeah. And an interesting story, a couple of years back, I was actually doing a haunted history tour, and we had a tour group up right in front of the prison, and we were standing in the original location of the courthouse, and I was telling the story of John Kehoe, who was the leader, the reported leader of the Molly Maguires,
Right.
Blackjack. And I started telling about how the day of his execution, he was brought out and a snow squall came through, and he was in a brand new suit of black, but he was holding a candle, and the candle was lit. And as Kehoe was making his way towards the gallows, right when he got to the base of the step, the candlelight was on the entire time. But when he took that step up to go to the gallows, it suddenly went out, almost like symbolic, if you will.
Right.
Well, I was telling the story to my tour group, and I said, just as Kehoe went to the base of the gallows and he took a step up, the candlelight went out. Honest to God, the light that was above us, the security light, went out just as I said that, and every other one stayed on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and my tour group have quite a story to tell.
Wow.
No doubt.
That's a good tour.
That is. Sign me
A little
up.
something.
They got their money's worth.
I think I did one of the walking tours a couple of years back where you went up like Montungo and then came down and was talking about some of them, and it's just crazy the history that's here, and I'm sure there's a lot of activity all around between miners and Native Americans and farmers and travelers, because Pottsville, was a mecca for a while.
Well, Yingling Brewery is said to have activity within it, the mansion up above. I was actually in Yingling Brewery a couple years back doing a presentation down in the caves, and super cool. We had a good time. But they make the claim that you can actually see the body of a former worker within there. They also make the claim that up on one of the top floors, you can hear barrels rolling around, and there's nothing up there.
Wow.
You make loud sounds. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to leave that job either.
No, absolutely. It's a good place. Good place.
That's awesome. So do you guys have any last things for us? I think we covered everything.
Yeah. One of the things I can mention that, we find in a lot of places we go to, and when we first started, one of our main questions was, why would a ghost, if given the option of possibly going to heaven, why would they stay?
Yeah.
And that is one of the primary things we try to find out on every single case. Okay, you have haunting, but why did it start? Why would somebody stay? Especially like a place like, let's say, Gettysburg. So much tragedy around the whole place. One of the most haunted places in the United States.
Right.
Why would somebody stay there when they died? And one of the things that we found out in most paranormal teams would agree with is that you often get, along with a haunting, this residual energy that sticks around. It gets embedded in the environment. And case after case, we find things like that. We get quite often a report of people laying in bed, and they will feel this horrible heavy pressure on their chest, maybe some chest pain, tightness. And they report it as, I felt like someone was on top of me, holding me down to the bed. And they're very startled that they have something negative there. And almost every single time that happens, Virginia, our medium, when she's doing her walkthrough, we'll go through different bedrooms and stuff. She'll get to the room where that person's laying in bed and find out someone had died of a heart attack in that room.
Interesting.
Yeah, so people are picking up on that information that's embedded into the environment. And the cool thing is that if you're into unified physics or quantum physics, physicists are starting to suggest that information is getting embedded into our environment, into things like protons. And there's something called the holographic universe, where they're saying every single thing that happens in our entire universe gets embedded in protons, and protons share information. So they can pull a proton out of you and get the whole of the information of the entire galaxy out of the proton.
Wild.
The problem is we're not quite there yet on how to extract that.
Right.
But that's one of the things we found here in this building, was that there was an area of significant negative energy that was built up, and we're kind of trained to break up some of that negative stagnant energy and get it out of here. And people quite often after we do that will report feeling a lot lighter area in the building. They'll come in and say, wow, it feels a lot lighter in here. That's how they describe it. So that's one of the things, on top of working with maybe a ghost, that we find a lot of this negative residual energy that's there. And some people even see ghosts in the form of a residual energy where, I don't know why, but a woman in a white dress seems to be the popular thing people see everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
someone might say, I saw this, let's use like an old homestead or a bed and breakfast. I saw this woman in a white dress walk down the hallway, but it doesn't pay attention to anybody. It's not conscious. It's not aware anybody's there. It's just like a replay of an event that happened in time. And people, for some reason, are able to see that now and then.
Interesting. And I have to say, you know, when in my time here, I've been here 2 years, and I've been on the morning shift, so I've been here at 3:30 in the morning, and I've been here, you know, late until into the evening, and I haven't necessarily ever seen or experienced anything, but I can say that after you guys were here, the energy in the building just changed a lot. Like, everybody seemed to be joking more and laughing more. And we didn't know, you know, we've had more people back in the office, but this all makes a lot of sense too, where like everybody's just like kidding around more, and it's definitely been different.
That's great.
Which is really
Good
nice.
thing.
It's always been a fun place, but like
Good. Hopefully it gets a little
more
more fun.
Even when we did the investigation, it didn't seem menacing. Like, it was pretty warm throughout the night. And we were even saying, towards the end of the investigation, we had one of our sensors going off literally right before we left, just a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
It was almost like saying goodbye, or don't forget about me. You know, I'm
Yeah.
still here.
Right.
We had the same thing occur where Mark and I were discussing. We were over by the sensor and we were having a discussion, and all of a sudden, about 10 feet behind us, one of the monitors just suddenly came on out of nowhere. And of course, we went over, investigated, and the only way that was coming on was to hit a key or hit the mouse.
right.
Yeah, it was
No
not
one
easy
did.
to get it to come on after.
Yeah, we were
Right.
banging,
Going on.
trying, but nothing. So,
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's stuff that people would never in a million years even think of. And I mean, it's going deep into, you know, some theoretical physics and stuff, how this information gets embedded in the environment. But people can pick up on that, not knowing it. And we found that out case after case in different businesses, actually, where employers will report certain workstations. People tend to get headaches all the time, or they tend to get agitated with maybe customers really quick.
Right.
And we go in and we find that there have been some very negative events that took place right there. And, you know, you have to clear up that energy and get it out of there. And that in itself, I think, helps calm the building, you know, even apart from the haunting.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, can people call you if they need help? Can they contract you? Do you do private residences? How can they get in contact with you?
The best way is to go onto our website. Again, it's the Pennsylvania Paranormal Association. So you could look that up, or just go on to theppa.net, theppa.net.
Okay.
And that's our homepage. There's a link there for an investigation request. We have an online form for people to fill out. Once we get that, we usually send out an email or make a phone call and make initial contact, and then we follow up later with a phone call and discuss whether investigation is warranted.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to be here
Absolutely.
and to do our investigation and talk to us about, you know, the building and the history and everything that you guys do, and I appreciate it. It's been cool.
I will
Yeah,
say
it
this:
is.
I've been listening to T-102 my entire life, and to do an investigation here was cool. It was really neat. So.
Yeah, and it was a good investigation.
Yeah, it was a
too.
good
We
one.
did have some experiences. We did not find anything that would be considered negative, demonic,
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah.
We got rid of some negative energy, but yeah, it's
doesn't
a
matter.
great building and
My
really
friends are
should
happy
thrive.
to be here, and
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The old
Yeah.
man coming down to
Awesome.
pay a visit.
yeah, he must have. So, well, thank you guys so much.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it.